pennies coming from our mints each month to supply copper for 3 new Statues of Liberty.
But industrial progress is directly linked to energy resources, and it was soon clear that America could never count on its oil alone to satisfy its ever-increasing energy demand. A large effort was made to reinforce in the population the idea that oil was something absolutely necessary before embarking in long-term risky investments in foreign countries.
Gasoline, for example, the most efficient mobile power source on Earth. That was the stuff that powered all those cars and trucks. And using the magic of research, oil companies compete with each other in taking the petroleum molecule apart and rearranging it into, well, you name it, fabrics, toothbrushes, tires, insecticides, cosmetics, weed killers, a whole galaxy of things to make a better life on Earth.
After weeks of discussions, there was a meeting at Qasem Palace on the outskirts of Jeddah. It was there that Saudi Arab government officials representing His Majesty signed a concession covering roughly 320,000 square miles. This was the starting point of a new American business venture abroad.
The popular image of the gold seeker was quickly replaced by that of the seeker of oil, which not by chance was also called the black gold.
Most important of all, the job would require men, hardy men, determined men, men who were willing to leave families and friends and journey halfway around the world on a quest that might end in failure. Men who could face hardship and monotony and still take it. And gradually they began to arrive. Carpenters, machinists, riggers, technicians, drillers, executives too, eager to extend a welcoming hand clasp to the new arrivals. Finally they drilled the first well. They found oil, but not in commercial quantities. It was not encouraging. They drilled again. No luck. And again, still failure. And then, at Dammam, it happened. Oil in commercial quantities had been brought in after 3 long, discouraging years. This was the goal toward which they had striven. This was the victory that faith and sweat had bought.
It was the birth of a new concept that would strongly influence American foreign policy from that time on, the so-called American interest abroad.
Serving the interest of the United States and demonstrating the vitality of the American system of free enterprise. A system which, from this new frontier, is pumping into the trade of the world oil, one of the materials that is making a truly great contribution to our modern civilization.
This is what the world map would look like if it were drawn according to each nation's energy resources. As one can see, the countries in the Persian Gulf would be larger than all the rest of the world together. The debate on how much oil is still left in the world is open, and ranges from those who maintain that the peak of extraction has already been reached, to those who believe that the shortage would not begin for many more years. In any case, the United States produces only 4% of the oil in the world, while it consumes about 26% of the total production.
What we have here is a stripper well that's producing from about 5,000 feet down, about a mile down. It's only producing 7 barrels per day, which is not very much. Most of the wells in this area produce about 7 barrels per day. This well once produced 100 barrels per day about 30 years ago. Since then, it's declined because it's only so much oil down in the ground, so we're producing it all, and it's running out of oil.
The need for foreign oil has been rising dramatically for the United States over the past 30 years. In 1973, the U.S. needed to import only 28% of its total consumption, while that figure today is nearing 60% and is projected to reach 70% by the year 2025. For this reason, in the recent past, Americans have also been looking at a different energy resource, natural gas. The majority of the reserves are located in the different states of Central Asia that once belonged to the Soviet Union, especially those around the Caspian Basin. In 1998, Dick Cheney, who was then the president of Halliburton, an oil and services company, commented, "I can't think of a time when we have had a region emerge as suddenly to become as strategically significant as the Caspian." The good Lord didn't see fit to put oil and gas only where there are democratically elected regimes friendly to the United States. Occasionally, we have to operate in places where, all things considered, one would not normally choose to go. But even more interesting is this document presented by a Unocal Oil Company official to a Senatorial Commission for Energy in the same year. It offers a totally different picture about the true interests of the United States in Afghanistan. The main issue was the need for multiple pipeline routes for Central Asian oil and gas. The Caspian region contains tremendous untapped hydrocarbon reserves. Proven natural gas reserves within Azerbaijan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, and Kazakhstan equal more than 236 trillion cubic feet. The region's total oil reserves may reach more than 60 billion barrels of oil. As one can see, the entire Caspian Basin has already been divided among the largest oil companies in the world. But there remains one problem, said the document: how to bring these huge amounts of resources to the countries that need it most, especially China and Japan. One option is to go east across China, but this would mean constructing a pipeline of more than 3,000 kilometers to central China, as well as a 2,000-kilometer connection to reach the main population centers along the coast. A second option is to build a pipeline south from Central Asia to the Indian Ocean. From there, the gas could be loaded onto ships bound for the east. One obvious potential route south would be across Iran. However, this option is foreclosed for American companies because of U.S. sanctions legislation. The only other possible route option is across Afghanistan, which has its own unique challenges. The territory across which the pipeline would extend is controlled by the Taliban, an Islamic movement that is not recognized as a government by most other nations. From the outset, we have made it clear that the construction of our proposed pipeline cannot begin until a recognized government is in place that has the confidence of governments, lenders, and our company. In the summer of 2001, the Unocal people made one last effort to find an agreement with the Taliban. But the meeting failed, ending with this ominous threat directed to the Taliban: either we will cover you with a carpet of gold, or we will bury you under a carpet of bombs. On September 10th, a detailed plan to attack Afghanistan was put on George Bush's desk for him to be signed upon his return from Florida. The following morning, the Twin Towers were turned into rubble. The United States immediately accused bin Laden, who at the time was in Afghanistan, and requested the Taliban to hand him over.
I want him held. I want justice. And there's an old poster out west, as I recall, that said "Wanted, dead or alive."
Bin Laden declared that he had nothing to do with the attacks. From Afghanistan, he said, it would have been impossible for him to organize such a complex and sophisticated operation. And a few days later, he added, there exists a government within the government of the United States. That secret government must be asked as to whom carried out these attacks. The U.S. should trace the perpetrators of those attacks to these persons who want to make the present century one of their own control, who want to enslave other countries. The Taliban responded that they would hand over the Saudi sheikh after the United States had shown the world the evidence that he was responsible for the attacks. But this never happened, and 3 weeks later, the United States attacked Afghanistan.